Hey guys, welcome back to Chris and Retro. Can't even see the name of the show tonight. We are tonight's video is something I've been pondering for a while, and it's related to this advice that we give to the younger generation and the things we're trying to do for preventative measures. And it's been a concept that's been kind of toying around in my head for a while, but I was stirred tonight to talk about it this evening and have a video about it by another channel. And not necessarily the content completely of the other channel, but it did show me that I'm not the only one thinking about these things relative to how we're passing along information to a younger generation to help them, understand what we know and hopefully course correct and not make the same mistakes we did. The channel that I listen to is Insane Throttle. Hollywood is the host of that channel. I've talked about Hollywood in the past. Actually, him and a friend of mine had gotten sideways and up on YouTube actually, and had it mediated by another channel, which was I've applauded the way it was mediated. But I do watch his channel. I think there's a lot that he offers that I find interesting and entertaining, particularly when it came to the Red River Rally and the things that were going on around that. I thought they did an excellent job of reporting out that, and I have called him out on this before. Tonight's video, he was talking about partying, and he is specifically from the MC culture. So I'm not from that culture. He's definitely from that culture and has been immersed in that for an awful long time. And so with that, there's a different set of norms related to that. But on this show, we talk a lot about substance use disorder and things around where addiction and things like that come into play. But it doesn't mean that binge drinking can also be a problem for you. And so he's sharing some advice that he was given that he's now going to pass along. And I'm just going to show you a real quick clip of that, because it's not so much about what he's offering advice, although it is, I think, decent advice for where he's at. It's more about the fact is that he is offering advice. And I'll get to my point on that one in a second. One of these days, I'm going to get really, really quick about getting these shared videos going. You guys are going to be mesmerized.
Some of the best advice I ever got that I never took, so I'm going to pass it on to you. Now, title of this video, Stop the Partying While You're Ahead.
So a couple things I want to point out. First of all, he's got great taste in baseball teams. If you look in the back of his garage over there, it's part of a Cubs flag. So I know he's from Chicago area, but man, at that point, anything he says in this video is going to be a good thing because he's got a Chicago Cubs flag up there. But so he's saying stop the partying while you're ahead. Now, I'm only pointing that out because of the idea that he's now conveying is that one of the values he contributes to the younger generation, his culture, or was contributed to him when he was younger by the older generation, as they call, graybeards, was to tell them to stop partying while you're ahead. And I want you to watch that video. Again, it's Insane Throttle. That's Hollywood. It's his newest video, or one of his new videos, at least within the last two new videos he's done. But the idea is that even in a motorcycle club culture that promotes partying, the older generation there, the guys that have been there and done that, are offering advice in the younger generation to do it better. They're not eliminating their culture, but they're saying, look, these are things that can cost you in the long run. And in that culture, it's still optional, whether people are listening to it or not. I say optional because it sounds to me like Hollywood ignored it. So apparently it's not a mandate. It was just advice to say, look, you're going to hurt yourself in the long run. And then later on, he goes on in the video to talk about the fact that if you look at bikers, they age aggressively. And usually the ones that are from the Vietnam era have aged aggressively. And usually it has heavily to do with the way that culture works and how hard they party. At least from his perspective, and from what I know of it, it seems to be the same. From my observations are consistent with that. Now, not intentionally, but from that same area of the country, Chicago, I think I've shared it on the channel before. I was out in Chicago a while back for work, and I was in an Uber, and I was talking to somebody about, some of the challenges in Chicago with all the crime and things like that. And this is an older guy. He's obviously been there. He says he's a lifelong resident. And his observation was the reason that things are going so sideways out there is because the quote unquote OG is gone. The original gangster, they're gone. And, so that would be the equivalent to the graybeard in the motorcycle club culture. Anyway, these people that are monuments of a community or of a club or of a street gang or whatever set standards and norms, and they've got experience they convey on to the younger generation. Well, in the street, gang life, RICO cases and everything else have removed a lot of them, and now they're in federal prison. So their shot calling in the streets is not there as much. Now, that specific person's conversation with me and my observations locally here in the Rochester, New York area is that in the absence of a hierarchy that people respect, it becomes about my own personal pride and clout, whatever it is I do. So if I go shoot somebody, I'm doing it to put attention on me. Whereas in the generation that I grew up in, even street crime had a hierarchy because it was business. A good, strong component of it was its ability to be self-sustaining and because of the risk, wealthy. And so to be wealthy in that, you have to have some construct and some norms, and people recognize that. You look at the Italian mafia, and there is definitely a hierarchy there. Now, I'm not applauding these environments. What I am saying is that even in those environments in the old school days, we would recognize a hierarchy that people would seek advice to. Now, somewhere along the line, either through in the street life that I'm talking about and in the general generation of young people, anywhere, from teens, I don't even know, the teens not as much anymore. I see some of a change there, but late teens, 20s, definitely late 20s and 30s. There's this idea that everybody before them didn't know what they were doing, and they're going to come in with their own ways and reinvent everything. Now, I'm all about change. I think change is a good thing to look at, but not everything always needs to change. We don't always have to change every stinking thing we touch, because not all things always were bad. And as I've touched on in other videos, because your personal experience was a bad personal experience doesn't mean that society should have to change on whole for everybody all times. And I think that that's where we get sideways. So we've lost respect for the people that are around that actually have advice that they can share with you. I can remember, I would hear my grandfathers, both of them. My one grandfather, he passed when I was real young, but my mother's father, I would hear a lot of his advice, and I could tell a lot of it was craziness, but some of it I would cling on to. My uncles, I would listen to my uncles and what they had to offer. One in particular, my Uncle Roger, was pretty instrumental in my recovery, because he's also in recovery, and he was an ex-military guy, pretty crazy in his youth, pretty intense guy in his youth. And so I really respect him and how he's, held it together all these years and lived a great life afterwards. So, this experience being invested back in us, the younger generation doesn't seem to listen as much. And so what I'm going to do in this video, and I at the intro, again, I get into the explanation of it. I think I qualified it a little too much, because really what I want to do is get to the point on this. For those that are younger, and there is a experienced level above you in any given area. So if it's motorcycle club culture, street life, addiction recovery, or just generally in life on whole, we don't get a pass with experience in our life to be just accepted for what we say. I think that all things should be at least considered based on our own experiences and challenged if it seems a little odd. But just because it's not of the current time doesn't make advice that's given to the younger generation irrelevant. And so this is going to be very important when we talk about prevention and the investment that I know a few of my friends are now having into young people to say, look, don't go where we went. Well, part of it is because we understand how this whole cycles out. We hear the cliche, history repeats itself. Well, at our age, 50 plus, we've seen history repeat itself. We've got decades of living through life, through mistakes and victories and everything else, where we've seen history repeat. And when history repeats, we see the markers when it's coming back up again. Now, I'm not saying all things are predictable. However, many things are. And circumstances certainly have earmarks for where they're going to lead. And that's where this advice should be heard. I think what happens in society today, that young people look at the older generation and say, you represent everything that's wrong in the world, and we have to fix the problems that you cause on us. I hear a lot about this, about, with environmental issues and you name it. There's all these things where, basically everybody older squandered all the resources of the U.S., and now everybody else has got to deal with the problems. And in some cases that may be true. Neither here nor there. There are people that have experienced life and have a good advice that they can offer to a younger generation. So if you're somebody that is going through life, I think one of the things, if you're hesitant to trust those that might be of a different belief system, or maybe not from your generation, or you even don't think that they speak the same language or dress the same way or couldn't possibly understand, one thing that we do understand is the history and how it repeated itself. We understand our own life experiences that many times are 3 and 4 times more than, or 2 and 3 times more than yours. And we also understand context. So context is really important. You may be going into a very challenging situation, and we probably can look at that from a greater context. We may have been through a similar situation, maybe not the exact same situation, but we may have some context that can either help you navigate that current situation or give you some hope that you might not be seeing because currently you're in the mud. And because of our experience and our lived experience, or people we know that have lived experience in that area, we can help you understand that this too shall pass, as very consistently does. I hope this makes sense tonight, because really, when I heard Hollywood speak, I was like, you know what? It's time to talk about why there is even value in people, older than you, investing in your life. Many of us are not doing it because we want you to know how much we know. I mean, there are people that out there do that. I look at a lot of guys that are trying to relive the old days. Sports is a big one. If you got somebody that used to play sports at a high level, of course, their stories they're going to tell you are going to make it more high level, because there's no way for them to ever prove it now. And they're going to try to tell you everything under the sun. That's pretty obnoxious. And I hear you. You really kind of have to judge the personality. But I think that for many of us, what we understand is that our individual contributor value and what we're giving back to society right now as an individual is not going to really move the needle. We're getting older. We're planning on other things. We're planning on more restful seasons in our life. Hopefully for some of us, I currently don't know when that'll ever happen for me. Retirement doesn't even seem like an option. But looking at, our life lens is different. So our greatest value is how we can influence and impact the lives of other people. What can we do to help you have a better situation based on the lessons we've learned? I think all too often that's viewed as us trying to get you to do things the way we used to do it. And that's not the case. What we're trying to do is help you understand through our own victories and losses how life played out for us, and hopefully help you make your own decisions. At least that's my intent. And I know pretty much anybody that I've talked to that is invested in the prevention type work, that is their heart, irregardless of political bias or any other thing. I hope this video is helpful to you. Consider if you're an older person, if you're 50 plus like myself, and you're trying to help somebody in their 20s, 30s, and recognize they may be seeing you from a different lens than you intend. Maybe part of it is by disarming and letting them know you just, your value right now is just to share what you've learned. It's not an expectation they receive it, but it is an option. And maybe disarm the conversation before you get even into it. Maybe you'll have more success in the hearing part of it. Guys, I appreciate you a lot. Thanks so much for the continued comments and support. Thank you for my fellow travelers that are speaking up about your recovery journey. I love it. We're building a community here of people that are like-minded in terms of our intent to go forward. I'm sure we all don't agree on every single thing, for sure. In fact, one comment said that my show is boring. So that's entirely true too. I'll put stuffed animals on here and have some maracas on the side if you need more entertainment. This show is never about entertainment. It's about a message of hope and help. It's about a message of prevention. It's my calling and purpose to make sure I give back what I've learned, because that is my purpose at this point in life, is to make sure that I'm investing in the lives of other people to make them stronger. I sincerely appreciate you guys. And until the next time we talk, please stay out of trouble.